Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, President Harry S. Truman. Happy birthday to you. Well, on this episode of Let Me Tell You About Missouri, we are going to talk about Harry S. Truman. Harry Truman was the 33rd president of the United States. And he was born on this day, May the 8th, in 1884. Why am I talking to you about Harry S. Truman? Because he is what we call a hometown boy here in Independence. Harry Truman was from Independence, Missouri. He was born in a little town outside of Independence, but moved here when he was 6 and lived here the rest of his life. Harry Truman was a president who was well known for his integrity. And remember, we say that integrity is doing the right thing even when others aren't watching. His honesty and his efficiency. And you might remember that efficiency, we talk about that in number talks, is being fast and accurate. So Harry S. Truman is a great role model when it comes to integrity, efficiency, and honesty. Here are a couple of facts about Harry S. Truman. Harry S. Truman was the vice president for a president who we call FDR, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and President Roosevelt served several years as president. So it was in his 4th presidency that he had Harry S. Truman as his vice president. Well, Harry S. Truman was only vice president for 82 days before President Roosevelt died, and Harry became president of the United States. Harry doesn't have a middle name. He simply has an initial. His middle initial is S. That stands for his 2 grandfathers. Both of their names started with S. So he is Harry S. Truman. Couple of fun facts I'll tell you about, and then I'll show you some things around here. Harry Truman was ambidextrous. That means he could do things with both hands. He could write with his left hand and his right hand. He could play sports with his left hand and right hand. He could use both hands, and that's kind of cool. President Truman always said, "The buck stops here." That was his slogan or his motto. Let's think for a minute about what does that mean? The buck stops here. You're right. That means that he knew as leader of our country that he had to take responsibility for all of the actions, and he was the one that was held accountable. That became particularly important when he decided to drop the atom bomb on Hiroshima to end World War II. President Truman was married to Bess, whom he went to high school with here in Independence, and they had one daughter, Mary Margaret, who they called Margie. Here's another fun fact. The first night of Margie's life, she spent the night in a drawer. They took the drawer out of their dresser, made it into a little bed with some blankets, and she slept there. And it had to wait till the next day when Harry could go out in a terrible snowstorm to get her a crib. So that's kind of a fun fact about them. Here's another fact about Harry Truman. Harry Truman liked to play cards. He liked to play all kinds of different card games. And he liked to play them with different men in the area, maybe poker, blackjack, and things like that. If you remember our principal, Dr. Kupka, Dr. Kupka always tells the story about how when she was a little girl in elementary school, a nice car would pull up into their driveway. President Harry Truman This was after his presidency. So he was former President Harry S. Truman would get out of the car and go into the basement area that they had at their home and play cards with her dad and her friends. And Dr. Kupka, whom they all called Cindy at that time, was always so excited because she would get to take a snack and a drink out to the car and give it to the driver who had driven Harry Truman to her dad's house. Well, Dr. Kupka was so excited that Harry Truman came to her house that one day at school she was telling the story about that, and her teacher said, "Cindy, we always tell the truth. Stop lying about that. Harry Truman wouldn't come to your house. He has no reason to." So Dr. Kupka was a very good student and she didn't say anything else, but she went home and told her mom. And she said to me when she was retelling the story, "My mom never told me, but she must have called the teacher because the next day at school, the teacher apologized to me and said, 'I'm sorry I called you a liar. I understand now that you were telling the truth.'" So that's kind of a fun fact about Harry Truman and then someone else that we know. So why do I show you this? Well, I told you that Harry S. Truman was from Independence. He lived here. He lived in this house. Now, this house is a picture that Harrison and Malia took of the house just last week. It is in walking distance from my mother-in-law's house. In fact, you can see this house from the house where my mother-in-law and then my husband grew up. So they were very close in proximity to where Harry S. Truman lived. It's also in walking distance to the train depots that I showed you the other day. Here's one more house. This one's a little bit less blurry of Harry S. Truman's house. So Harry Truman lived here. He would walk to the train depot. Sorry, friends. He would walk to the train depot, catch a train, and take it back to Washington. Well, he also decided after his presidency was over the first time that he would run for president again. When he did that, he had what we call the whistle stop tour. He wanted to be around the people. He wanted to see the people. He wanted to get to know the people. He wanted to be the people's president. If we think about what the whistle stop tour means, you're right. He would go out and meet people on the train. And he would ride in the back of the train and go out in the back of the caboose and talk to the people and wave to the people as they stopped at different depots throughout the city. President Truman also knew something that we would all it would help us all if we learned this. A famous quote that he always said was, "It is amazing what you can accomplish if you do not care who gets the credit." Let's think about that. It's amazing what you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit. If you think about things that we do at school or things that we do at home, it's really important to work together as a team, to work for the betterment of other people. And if we don't care who gets the credit, we can always succeed. Right? When I think about this quote, I think about Dr. Wheeler and Miss Chamberlain, because they work so hard at our school. But you know what? Whenever something great happens, they always say, "You're right, our students at Gracemore did do a great job," or "Our teachers at Gracemore are helping our students doing a great job." So they really embrace the fact that we can accomplish so much more if we don't care who gets the credit. So after Harry Truman finished being president, he came back to this home in Independence and started working on his presidential library. Now, these pictures, this picture that Harrison and Malia took, are from a long way away, okay? But Harry S. Truman started building this library and preparing for it. There are thousands and thousands, over 35,000 artifacts in this museum telling about Harry S. Truman and his presidency. And right now, you can't get very close to it because they've spent the last year doing a really huge remodeling of this. $25 million, which is so much more than it even costs to build this museum. I think that I read that it cost $1.8 million to build it, and they're spending $25 million to make some upgrades. So this is what it looks like from the closest point where you can get to right now. They want to keep people away. They have the whole back of the building open, and they're hoping to be finished with that remodel later this summer in July or August. So I'm hoping that that does happen because it's a great place to visit. Again, this is really close to my house. Harrison often, when it's not under construction, will walk down there, and well, there's some Pokemon stops down there, so he'll do that. But then he'll walk around and just enjoy the beauty of it, enjoy the nicely mowed lawn. They've also had special big events here. Sometimes at Easter, they have great big dump trucks up here, and they let the dump trucks down, and Easter eggs just roll all down here, and they let kids come and collect the eggs. So, all kinds of fun things. Remember, Harry Truman was the people's president. He believed the buck stops here, the buck stops with him. And one thing that we can take away from his presidency and his life is it is amazing what you can accomplish if you do not care who gets the credit. All right, shining stars, let's go out and accomplish great things. I love you and enjoy the great weather.